So, good morning, everyone. Before I get started, one thing that I like to share with everyone is that I usually utilize the Bible to tell stories. I do that for a number of reasons. One, because there are many people who will listen to this afterwards, who are more familiar with it. They grew up in the church, whatever the case may be, and it's a way for them to better understand what we're talking about. Also, this is exactly what Ernest Holmes did as well. He used that as a tool in order to teach us. Many of these stories that exist within the Bible predate the Bible. They've been around for a very, very long time. They're ancient stories, and they're designed to teach a lesson. So I'm going to use one of those stories this morning, and that's the story of Daniel, Daniel in the lion's den. And we'll use that to talk a little bit about this concept or the fact of life and death and how that applies to us. So Daniel, if you're not familiar with the story, he was exiled from this place he used to live called Judah, and that's modern day Israel, Palestine area. And he was under the reign of someone called King Darius. And being in that land of foreigners, he worked hard to create a place for himself. And in creating a place for himself, he became known for his integrity. He became known for his wisdom, and it allowed him to advance in that society, eventually becoming like an official, one of the top officials in King Darius's kingdom. But he always maintained who he was. Daniel continued the practices that he always practiced, his prayer and his supplication and everything he learned in order to maintain his relationship with God. He stuck with his own vision. Now, the governors and the judges and other officials, they saw this favor that King Darius had on Daniel, and they were jealous because King Darius was saying that he was going to make Daniel over the entire land, basically make him the prime minister, kind of like what the UK has. And that caused a lot of jealousy because King Darius, I don't know if you know a lot about history, but that's an actual person. And King Darius had this huge kingdom in what was called Persia, extending from modern day Iran. It was huge. And it included many different nations. And so they wanted to get rid of this guy because this guy, is not even from here. How is he advancing so far? And how is he going to lead our entire nation? He's not even one of us. And so they all got together and they conspired to bring down Daniel. And they did that by going to the king and basically tricking him. They got him to sign a decree. And that decree said that for the next 30 days, no one in the kingdom can worship anyone but King Darius for the next 30 days, just to show how much we love the king. So they're not going to worship their gods and whomever else they worship. They're going to just worship King Darius for 30 days because they knew Daniel was going to stick to his relationship with his creator and his practices and the vision that was given to him. So he continued to pray 3 times a day as he always did. He would open up his window toward Jerusalem and he would pray. And his faith was completely unmovable. He was listening to the God within and not to those things outside of himself. So, of course, they're going to continue watching him and documenting that he is not praying to King Darius. And when they got enough documentation, they went back to King Darius and said, "Hey, this guy is breaking your decree," as they hoped. And so they went ahead and arrested him. And King Darius was very sad because this is his top guy, and he really grew to love and respect and lean on Daniel. But once he signed a decree, he had to follow through with it. That was how they did things in their kingdom. And so he had to, and the punishment was that the person who broke this rule had to go inside of a lion's den for the night. And in the morning, you would be lion's leftovers, I guess. And so they put him inside of the den. And before King Darius walked away, he said, "Thy God, whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee." Now, King Darius wasn't of the same faith of Daniel, but he saw how earnest his faith was. That even he believed that you're going to make it through this because that God you believe in must be powerful because, you're just going to keep following what you've been taught. All night long, the king couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't find peace. And first light in the morning, he got up with his entire patrol and went straight to the den. And they rolled away the big rock. And he said, Daniel, servant of the living God, is God able to deliver thee from the lions? Modern day translation, dude, are you there? Does your God really come through for you? I pray to God he did. And so Daniel says, O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel and has shut the lions' mouths. They have not hurt me. Modern day translation, I'm good. My God has me. And the king was overjoyed. And so Daniel was lifted from the den and he didn't have a single scratch on him. And that's all because he stuck to his own vision. He stuck to his own belief. He stuck to God as he knew it within him. And Darius had declared in his royal court to all the nations that he was over that the God of Daniel is the living God whose kingdom shall never be destroyed. I want to talk about that for a little bit as we move into our subject. These lions, all of us face these lions in our own individual lives. These are those roaring fears that we hear inside of our head all the time. All the outer pressures of life, from bills to relationships to our children to our jobs to things going on in our society and the political spectrum. These are all the quote unquote threats from the outside world. These are the lions that we all must contend with. And that den is the appearance of confinement. This is where you currently reside in your life. It is those pressures that are on you that tell you this is where you must be. You can't move outside of these boundaries. But of course, we know that these are false appearances. This is the place where faith must be demonstrated. Daniel himself represents something. He represents your divine consciousness, that part of you that refuses to compromise your truth. And of course, the angel, that's divine law responding to your unwavering belief. That is the harmonizing of the conditions around you. That's when you know that you know that you know. You know God's going to come through for you. You're not even worried about it. You see the lions, you see the challenges in your way, but you just have this unshakable faith and you just continue to walk in that faith, knowing that the opposition in front of you will crumble right before you. And King Darius represents the human reasoning within you that is awakened by the evidence of spirit. And we all have that King Darius. We want to express ourselves. We want God to express from us, to do a work that we have been called to do on this earth, something that we feel deep down inside of us. And you have this voice telling you why you can't do it, why you shouldn't do it now. That is that King Darius within you. And you got to basically walk in faith and show that reasoning faculty who the God you serve is, that God that is within you. You see, we are all called to this deeper life. We are here for one reason and one reason only, which is to become our truest self, to come into the full expression of God through us, in us, and as us. A danger, however, that we all face is that there is a deep distrust in our own thoughts. Many of us carry a deep distrust in our own divinity, our own divine selfhood. In the Quran, in Surah 9:31, it says, they have taken their rabbis and monks as lords besides God. This means that you're listening to all the external authorities and you're giving more weight to these external authorities over your own thinking, over the voice that you hear from within, out of the conversation God is having with you. That could be your politicians, that could be your professors, it can be the people who are authorities in a particular subject, it could be the people who are preaching to you. This is all good information to get in, but ultimately you must rely on the God within. You must rely on your own thoughts and have an unshakable, unwavering belief that you are being guided aright. God is constantly calling to us from the center of our being to be expressed in some unique way. All of us have something that we are destined to bring to the world. It's all about whether we're going to allow it. Unfortunately, we have come to ignore that voice over the years because, well, you got to wait until you're older. Or you wish you did that when you were younger. Or after you get the surgery, when the kids grow up, when you get out of debt, when the house is paid off, when the car is paid off. But sometimes these shoulds that we have, these things that we should do, they don't work because the life one is living runs crosswise to the grains of one's own soul. That's a quote by Dr. Parker in Let Your Life Speak. We keep saying all these things that we should do or we should wait for, but in fact, these are just excuses that we are creating in our own mind to not follow the calling that is within us. We all arrived in this world complete yet incomplete. We have our own personalities that we are born with. We have our own blessings that we were born with. And those things about us are carried throughout our entire lives. I remember when my children were babies and they had certain personality attributes. And even now, in their 30s, they still have those things about them that I can remember when before they can speak. So we don't create our children's personalities, and our parents didn't create our personalities. We were actually born with them. We were born with our own divine gifts, and those things were added upon over time from other influences. Influences of our parents, influences of our grandparents, influences of the culture that we grew up in, our society, and the expectations that are on us. In the software industry, we have this concept called legacy debt. And it kind of reminds me of all of these layers of influence on top of our personality as people. This concept of legacy debt, I want you to think of it like this. You're at work, and there is some software package that everyone uses, and you can't get rid of it because it has all the important information in it, and it's used across the company or used across the organization. And you can't just rip it out and replace it. So you keep adding changes to it, you keep making fixes to it and updates over time, but you never really remove the parts of the system that you no longer need, the parts that no longer serve the organization. And since this legacy code is still there, it begins causing unintended behavior. It causes the program to run slower, and it becomes harder and harder to change over time. Unfortunately, many of us are like that. We're carrying around legacy debt. You see, we must be willing to get rid of our old code in favor of a new mental program. And you already have that mental program. It's part of your core operating system, and it's designed to guide you to your divine purpose. This entire process of letting go of our old self reveals for us the God within. Ernest Holmes says in this thing called you, life is entered into you, and with it, the irresistible impulse to create. Divine intelligence has willed so. Create or perish is the eternal mandate of nature. The very urge for personal gratification is incomplete until it finds a universal outlet. In order to find that universal outlet for all of us, it is important that we move to go into the silence. The silence is a quiet place where we sit and we listen to the voice of God, to the voice of spirit, guiding our expression. The silence, for those who are not familiar with the term, is simply sitting and allowing. We're not necessarily thinking about anything in particular. We're allowing our minds to go blank. And when we allow our mind to go blank and then just taking into the silence one thing and one thing only, the question of what is in me that is waiting to be given to the world. The silence is a powerful tool that we should exercise on a regular basis. To make sure that this is clear, the reason why we're going through this process is because ultimately we want to die to the old self and be reborn in a new expression. We want to be reborn in a way that allows us to truly express what God has in us, what we have to give to the world. And so when we go into the silence and we commune directly with our Creator and we ask the question, what is it that we are looking to give to the world, or that what we can give to the world, or we're being called to give to the world? It is important to remember that this is not a question about what you would like to have. This is not a question about material gain. This is not about a house. This is not about a car. This is not about jewelry. It's not about fine clothes. It's not about any of those things. It's not about who you want to be with. It's not about a relationship, future husband or wife. It's not about children or having a relationship with them. It's not about those things that we desire. It's not about the career you want or a business or becoming governor. This is a question of what is the divine service that you are here to give from the deepest part of who you are? That is what we're looking to do ultimately in life, is to give our divine service. And that could come through us as a career. It could come through us as a business. It can come through us as an elected official. That's possible. But each person has something unique that they bring to whatever they were called to do. Two individuals could be called to be nurses, but for very different purposes. Two people could be called to be professors, but for very, very different purposes. You have something very unique within you that God wants to share with the world. To illustrate this, I would like to bring up or talk about Jay-Z, the music mogul, Jay-Z. I want to use him as an example because as I was putting this together, a song that he created in 1997 popped into my head. And I got to thinking about what I know of his background. In 1997, it was only a handful of years since he was in the streets selling drugs. And in his music, he talks a lot about wanting to get away from that. You can hear the yearning in his voice about wanting to get away from such a dangerous life. And he also had another one of his songs on his albums where he spoke about one of his customers, and he revealed in a song that it was his mother. And it's a heartbreaking song. And throughout this series of songs, he kept talking about this yearning. And as I'm working on this talk, I'm recognizing that that was his call from within to be greater, to do better. At the beginning of this song called Can I Live that he wrote in 1997, the very beginning says, "We invite you to something epic where we hustle out of a sense of hopelessness, sort of a desperation. Through that desperation, we become addicted, sort of like fiends that we're accustomed to serving. But we feel we have nothing to lose. So we offer you, well, we offer our lives. What do you bring to the table?" This is his way of basically saying, I have nothing else. I am just going to give all that I have into this particular endeavor. It happened to be music. That was his expression. And I don't know what that expression did to improve the world, but I do know that some of his music is some parts of it is uplifting. It's encouraging to certain groups. And that's what he had to contribute. And it also was the thing that took him from a place where he did not contribute to the world, but was actually part of the downfall of the community he lived in, to someone who was on the other side of that, being in a position to help and to give back to that community. That was a transformation that he had to go through. And I simply wanted to use that as an example here. Dr. Parker, in his book, Let Your Life Speaks, talks about this. He said, if we're untrue to self, we will extract a price from others. We will make promises we cannot keep, build houses from flimsy stuff, conjure dreams that devolve into nightmares, and other people will suffer. And that sounds a lot like what he had shared in some of his music. I want us to think about jobs that we have had, volunteer positions, where we did these things out of a sense of duty. And maybe we were excited about it at first. But over time, that excitement waned. Maybe we outgrew that role. We outgrew that position. We outgrew the work that we were doing. Maybe the time for us to do that work has passed, but we continue to do it. What happens to the quality of your work in those positions? Many times you're just going through the motions. You begin forgetting things, leaving things out, deciding what's important and what's not important. Your enthusiasm wanes. And ultimately, how do you affect the organization that you're a part of? It's not a positive effect that you're having because at that point, that's probably not where you should be. That is where the silence becomes so important to us to be able to sit down, to be able to listen to the God within, to be guided to where your next step is toward the expression of God through you. The Christians have a verse, John 3:16. You see it plastered on the back of many vehicles, right? And there's a particular way of reading this. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. And of course, for many of my Christian brothers and sisters, that refers strictly to the birth of Jesus Christ. And I'm not here to dispute that, but I would like to share another way of looking at that based on what Ernest Holmes has taught us. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. Well, God being within you, that infinite giver, that creative force, that son must be your divine idea. It must be the gift that you are here to give to the world. Now, if we look at John 3:16, that is a powerful sentiment to many Christians because they're looking at the death of Christ and making an ultimate sacrifice. Now, for you to step into your godhood, to step into your God self, that takes a level of courage. And in stepping into your full self, you have to give something up. And in giving whatever that is up, giving up how your life is now can be painful, painful unto death, because there is fear and you do not know what the next step holds. That is a sort of death, and it is just as scary. Now, through your divine expression, by following it, however, you do gain a spiritual immortality like Christ by allowing yourself to die to your old self, allowing yourself to give up what you thought you needed, to give up what makes you comfortable. That spiritual immortality that you can gain, like Martin Luther did when he began the Protestant Reformation, going against the grain of everything that he had been taught in centuries of indoctrination. To Martin Luther King, who went against the grain of everything in a society in a way that people thought was right and ultimately changed the course of an entire nation. To Thomas Edison, that brought us into a technological revolution, to Albert Einstein, to the teacher or the professor who influenced you and many other students, to the writer that penned words that encouraged you and many others to improve their health, to improve their finances, to give them ideas on how to organize, to defend the rights of those who are downtrodden. What about the person who created an outreach program, who provided a listening ear and an open heart when you were ready to give up on life? These are all examples of individuals who had stepped into their own fullness, gave of themselves, and they died of who they were in order to give something to this world to bless others, whether it was in business, whether it was in spirituality, whether it was in science or education. They stepped into their own calling, and some of them until death. Now, everyone may not be remembered, but someone will remember those who stepped into their own fullness and shared themselves with the world. I'm sure that all of you, if you thought about it, can remember a few individuals in your life so far that had a profound effect on you, and they may not even know it. There are people that I can think about right now that form part of my personality. They have personality traits that I took on. There are people that I remember that kept me safe from real harm through their own stepping into their fullness. Maybe a story I'll share one day. All of these great souls live beyond the body through their service, through their ideas, and ultimately through their love. And you are called to give your unique son, give up your son, your SON, your spiritual contribution to the world. Unfortunately, we contend with a fear of living. Ernest Holmes says we possess an inward heritage of divine consciousness, sufficient to bring the world back to a golden age, yet it avails us not, because we do not know ourselves. We know not this all important fact. Our education has taught us something about everything, but little about ourselves. Had we been taught and trained to understand self, we could be all, we could all be living today with serene minds and smiling faces instead of gnawing anxiety and frowning faces, which are evident everywhere. That is in Discover Yourself, page 134. This is the fear of living that I'm referring to. We rely so much on our education, we rely so much on what we learn from around us, but we're not paying attention to the words or the motivations from within. When we have that inner calling and we choose to follow it, that courage to follow that inner calling is not done with an absence of fear. It's a commitment to begin without guarantees. In the Four Spiritual Laws, Reverend Edwin Gaines says the only surefire way to know whether you have made a commitment and is when there is no turning back. And the only way out is through, all the way to the other side. Because if there is a side way out, that is not a commitment. So when we go into the silence, and over a period of time, it becomes revealed to us what our calling is, and we decide to step out on faith and follow that calling, we're stepping out with no guarantees. We're stepping out without a safety net. We're taking a leap into the darkness, but we know in the deepest part of our soul that our Creator has cleared a path for us. In New Thought, we use the word spirit, we use the word universe, synonymous with God, because we understand that there is nothing outside of God. The universe mirrors our inner state. We're talking about God. So if our commitment is weak, that is what we receive from the universe. If you are tentative, That is what we receive from the universe. If you are full of faith, however, then you are unstoppable because literally heaven and earth, the universe, will be moving to fulfill your purpose. This den that we all exist in, what we believe is confinement, is actually a sanctuary for us. Life and death are not opposites. This is actually a cycle. These are stages of transformation. Each death in our lives, the death of fear, the death of limitation, the death of false identity, is a rebirth into a greater life. Daniel's story is reminding us to stand firm in our own truth. And then even the lions in our lives will become our allies. That den that you may fear is the very place that God has put you in, or rather, where spirit is the very place where spirit is going to prove itself through you. So let all your fears fall silent, and let divine love express through you. For the God who shut the mouths of the lions lives within you, speaking in the silence, calling you to live as the eternal life you already are. And I'd like to close with a short affirmation. There is but one mind, one law, one principle, one substance in this universe, and I am one with all there is. I release the old and rise renewed in the spirit of life. The lions of fear fall silent before the power of my faith. I live, move, and have my being in the eternal God within. I give thanks. I am grateful. I release and let go, knowing it is done. And so it is.